afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for coming out and joining us on this first Sunday in a few weeks where we've actually had decent weather. I know you could be out trying to chip ice off your driveway while there's a little bit of a melt. My name is Janet Colasino. I am the Cultural Asset Manager here at the East Hartford Public Library, and I am thrilled to be celebrating 100 years of Pratt Whitney jet engines. Some of you, I noticed, were looking at the new display we've got up here in our meeting room. We will have more on display up in the library as we kick off this celebratory year. As Carl and Keith have mentioned to some people, we will be organizing a tour of the Hangar Museum over at Pratt & Whitney in April. It's April 15th, so if you're interested in joining that, you can see me and we can get you signed up for that tour. We will be celebrating Aviation August again here at the library. We had a STEAM challenge for all ages to make paper airplanes in our makerspace and fly them in our atrium, which was quite fun. We're going to be collaborating with the New England Air Museum, and you'll hear more about that from our presenters. And then the community will be invited to Pratt & Whitney, I believe in November, but more details will follow on that. So look at our program calendar in the fall for information on a Pratt & Whitney based celebration of 100 years of Pratt & Whitney jet engines. But right now it is my pleasure to introduce to you Keith Lindstrom and Carl Cruff, who will be talking about 100 years of aviation power with Pratt & Whitney jet engines today. Between them, they have nearly 80 years of engineering experience at Pratt Whitney, and they are going to share their knowledge and expertise with us this afternoon. So thank you again for coming out. Thank you, Carl and Keith, and I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Thanks, John. As Jenna said, Carl and I worked at Pratt, oddly enough, together for my last 5 years. But we now work together at the New England Air Museum. I retired in 2010, Carl retired in 2013, and we went and joined a restoration team on a DC-3 that had flown for 50 years. We're now working on an E-1B tracer aircraft, and that'll probably take us another 2 to 3 years to finish. But we thought we'd give you a little bit of a taste of what the New England Air Museum does. We'll start out. This is our B-29 Super Fortress. It never flew in World War II, oddly enough. It was built, completed assembly in June of '45, and did not see time in Japan with the war ending in August. But we built a separate building just for that airplane. It's that big. When we have students in, which is quite often, they often ask us, how did you get that thing in here? and one of the frequently funny stories I tell them is, well, we lifted it in with a helicopter. We took the roof off the building and dropped it into the helicopter, which is not quite true. But, you can figure that out when we get there. So our mission at the New England Air Museum, and this is going to be the only thing I read verbatim, we serve to preserve, inspire, engage, and educate, to breathe life into the history, mystery, and genius of flight. We serve about 20,000 school-age students a year. The ambitious goal for the museum within the next several years is to get to 50,000 a year. We're going to try and do that with telecommuting and internet, trying to get them to get this message while they sit at their desks in school. We have an education staff that does a wonderful job. Sometimes the docents, like Carl and I, get dragged into that. We have a summer camp that the students come to and learn everything from how airplanes are built. They go over and visit Bombardier, or they would work with us. We have them come into our restoration shop, and they learn how to do riveting, and they learn how to drill things. And I mean, this is for kids that are 10 to 15 years old. So that's what we're all about, is to inspire the next generation, because a lot of us are not there anymore to do that. The museum started in 1960. A group of aviation people, including one from Pratt Whitney, I think it might have been Churchill, Larry Churchill, got together and they wanted to collect aircraft and so forth and engines found in the state of Connecticut. And they found this airplane right here. It's called the Bancroft. It was built in Connecticut back in like 1904. So they formed what they called the Connecticut Aeronautical Historical Association. That is the parent to the New England Air Museum today. And while they were planning to bring this airplane into a museum setting, the airplane was in a barn on a family farm, and guess what? It burned down. The only thing we have left is the landing gear, which is that little piece right there. And the heat was so hot from the fire, the landing gear is, an upside down frame, so. But that got the ball rolling, and we started collecting aircraft. And we also borrowed some space from Pratt, some hangar space, even though most of the museum was outdoors. A lot of our military aircraft and a lot of the early commercial aircraft of that time were outdoors right on Route 75. I don't know if any of you have been up in that area lately, but you've got hotels on the right side, you've got McDonald's and Dunkin' Donuts and everything on the right side. And this was on the airport, that was on the airport property until October 3rd, 1979. October 3rd, 1979, an F4 tornado came walking right up Route 75 through Pequannock, through Windsor, into Windsor Locks, and promptly destroyed 16 of 32 aircraft in our collection. They didn't quit. They kept going. They worked with the state. They recovered. And 2 years to the day, October 3rd, 1981, they reopened on a 54-acre plot. And this is our front building here. They reopened on a 54-acre plot on the backside of the museum, backside of the airport, behind the current control tower. And over the next 81, for the next 40, 50 years, we have grown. We've added 3 museum display buildings. Here's one. This is the B-29 hangar right there. The civilian hangar is this one with the white roof right there. And the building that the lobby is on is attached to our military hangar. And this is inside the military hangar. You can see we've got the J-57. There's one upstairs in this library. And it powered I'm sorry, I didn't want to do that. I wanted an F-100 Super Sabre. And here's one of our guests. One of the big differences between the New England Air Museum and other museums around the country is that people can do this. You go to the Air and Space Museum in DC at Dulles Airport, you can't sit in any of their aircraft. You can't climb into the bomb bay of Enola Gay, which was the B-29 that dropped the atomic bomb, and which is at Udvar Hazy. You can't get that close to these aircraft. You can't be within the distance between Carl and I on many of their aircraft. But at New England, because we're inspiring and educating and trying to get all people of all ages to feel passionate about it like Carl and I do, and anybody that worked there feels the same passion. By letting them actually get in and play with the controls and sit there and watch the control surfaces move, we're hoping that's part of the magic of our building. We have currently about 45 aircraft on display in those 3 buildings and outside of the 3 hangars. We have another 30 or so in a 20,000 foot storage hangar that we just don't have enough floor space to display all of them. So we rotate some of the aircraft from time to time. This little gem right there, that's a one of a kind. It's the only one in the world. That is a control car for a U.S. Navy blimp. We received that control car from Goodyear, and it took 22 years to clean it up, restore all the plexiglass, put new engines on it, create the control center for that Navy blimp. It's a submarine hunter. It was hunting subs off the east coast of the U.S. during the early days of World War II. This is an Electra, a Lockheed Electra, the little twin-engine passenger airplane. It's probably more famous for being the exact airplane that Amelia Earhart tried to circumnavigate the world with. In fact, our Electra was only 3 assembly positions away from Amelia's airplane when it was at Lockheed, being assembled at Lockheed. Connecticut has a really rich aviation history. I don't think I need to tell you, any of you that. Besides Pratt Whitney, you've got Hamilton, now Collins Aerospace. We've got Sikorsky down in Stratford. They're now part of Lockheed Martin. They're not part of United Technologies anymore. And you've got Kaman Aerospace in Bloomfield. What else am I missing? A lot of little mom and pop shops scattered throughout the state that were all in business to support Pratt, Hamilton, Sikorsky, Kaman. The industry of the industry of Connecticut goes with the industry, the aviation industry that had been created. This big beauty on the bottom is a VS-44 flying boat. Sikorsky built 3 of them. This is the only one left. One crashed in Nova Scotia on takeoff, one crashed on landing in South America. And it only lands and takes off from water. The landing gear, or the gear you see right here, is for maintenance. So when the aircraft comes in, taxis in, and they need to do an engine change, or they need to do an inspection, they go ahead and put those wheels on, they pin them to the aircraft, and then they tow it out with a truck or a tug. That's the only one left. And it has its own unique story of how it survived all those years flying both to Europe and then flying off the coast of California. That was very luxurious travel back in the 1940s and 50s. And this is Igor Sikorsky's first production helicopter, the R-4. After he got done playing with fixed-wing airplanes, he had a vision of trying to build helicopters to perform a different role, not necessarily commercial travel or even military applications, but he wanted to use helicopters to save people. And we've just released a brand new display in our special exhibits through the eyes of Igor Sikorsky. We put up 4 brand new displays in the last 4 years. The first was the Women in Flight, Connecticut Women in Flight, in one of our hangar hallways. The Kosciuszko Squadron, Defenders of Freedom. Kosciuszko was a Polish general that fought with George Washington in the Revolutionary War. And the very strong Polish contingent carried through into World War II and helped the Allies defeat Germany in Europe. And then probably one of the best displays is the Tuskegee Airmen display, which has recently received a place in the, help me Carl, Freedom Trail. Yeah. The Freedom Trail, talking about the actions of the African Americans that fought in World War II, fighting, flying airplanes, maintaining airplanes, and supporting the U.S. Army Air Corps in World War II, and so forth. So we've enhanced our visibility and our storytelling. Besides just 45 airplanes in the hangar floors, we've gone ahead and added some very important stories. How many of you know that the early fighter and bomber aircraft in World War II, getting ready for World War II, as they were being built, were actually flown by women before they went into service. Where were all the guys? They were already at war, or they were at the Air Force or Navy bases, the Army Air Corps bases or Navy bases getting ready. So who was flying the airplanes from Boeing Wichita or Boeing Seattle or Douglas Long Beach or McDonnell in St. Louis to those Air Force, to those Army Air Corps bases or the Navy bases? The women.
Wasp.
Yeah, the Wasp, the women air service pilots. Right? So this story here was extremely eye-opening to a lot of folks.